Okay, let's go ahead and solve this question together. How much water would I need to add to 500 milliliters of a 2.4 moles per liter or molar potassium chloride solution to make a 1 molar solution? So I'm starting with 500 mils. I know my original concentration is 2.44 moles per liter, and I want to make a 1 molar solution. So I want to dilute this original volume that I've got, add some water, and end up with a diluted solution that has a concentration of 1 molar. So the first step there is unpacking it, it's kind of talking out loud or drawing yourself a diagram as I just did, and thinking about what is it that we're trying to solve for and what do we have. So let's go ahead and just identify the different variables that we've got here. Remember, our formula for dilution is C1 V1 equals C2 V2. So the first step then is going to be to identify what we have. So I'm starting off with 500 mils. So there's my initial volume. And the 2.4 moles per liter solution is my initial concentration, C1. Sometimes you might look at these questions and think to yourself, well, which one's my initial concentration? And a good rule of thumb is if you're doing a dilution, the higher concentration is going to be your C1. So over here, the final concentration after the dilution, 1 mole per liter, is quite a bit less than 2.4 moles per liter, so there's my C2. Okay, and also the way the question's worded, I'm making a 1 molar solution after I add some water. So that's my final concentration, 1 mole per liter. So I've identified my variables. What I'm really looking for here then is the V2. So I'm going to have to find that, and the question's asking me how much water do I need to add to the 500 mils. So this is not a tricky question, we just have to think about it. First, I've got to figure out what is my final volume going to be. So I've got to solve for V2. After I've done that, I can quickly and easily figure out how much water I added because I know I started with 500 mils and I ended up with whatever my final volume is going to be. So by subtracting the difference, I can figure out how much water I added. So let's go ahead and start by solving for V2. So I need to set up my equation here. I'm going to divide both sides of this equation by C2 so that I have C1 V1 divided by C2 is going to give me V2. And now I can go ahead and plug in the values. So C1 is 2.4 moles per liter, making sure that I keep my units in my calculation. V1 is 500 mils. Notice that because I'm putting my volume in milliliters, my answer for volume is also going to come out to milliliters here. And my final concentration is 1.0 moles per liter. Let's go ahead and cancel those units out. So my mole per liter units are going to cancel my units of concentration. My units of volume do not cancel, they're still there in my answer. And I can do the math. 2.4 times 500 divided by 1 is going to come out to be 1,200 or 1,200 milliliters. Okay, and I'm not quite done yet. I need to still figure out how much water did I add to get to 1,200 milliliters if I started at 500. Now in terms of sig figs here, just a word of caution, because we still have one more step, it's a good idea to track how many sig figs you have by underlining them, but don't actually round your answer to the very end. So if I look at this question, it's a multiplication and division calculation, and so I'm allowed to have, in this question, I am allowed to have a total of 1 sig fig because I see that the 500 mils has only 1 sig fig in it, and the others have 2 sig figs. So technically I should be allowed to have 1 sig fig in my answer. So I could underline the 1, but I'm not going to round it down to 1,000 mils at this point because I'm not finished and I don't ever want to round till my very last step. Keep track of my sig figs, but don't round till I'm done. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Our last step, we need to find the volume of water that was added. So the volume of water added is going to be my 1,200 mils minus what I started with, which was 500 mils. Okay, so this isn't a subtraction, so we're now following our sig fig rule tells us that we have to round to the least number of decimal places. Okay, now there are no decimal places here actually, so it's going to be the last place that has a digit. So here the hundreds place, okay, would be where we round to. So 1200, first you just do the math. So 1200 minus 500 is 700. Okay, and our sig fig rule tells us that we would have to round here anyhow to the hundreds place. Okay, so counting back basically from the last digit to where we see a non-zero digit, and that tells us where we have to round it. So the hundreds place is the 7, and that's fine. So we've got one sig fig in our answer, which is correct, and that's our final answer. So we had 700 mils of water that was added to the 500 mils to get to our diluted solution.